Hey guys, Michael here, Nickens here, and I'm about to try and do something very difficult. I'm going to try and be unbiased. I'm going to try and give you guys the story that you deserve and try to understand, because I think the MLW community at this point kind of needs to put all of this in perspective. And I really didn't love the comments that I saw on the video, and I felt the need to respond and kind of give context to the whole situation that has been going on, especially behind the scenes, and it may have not been promoted enough in terms of like the wider MLW audience and what went down with Sawyer, Drew, and the Cobras organization itself. For the most part, I would say this is spawned on by a lot of people in the comments not understanding the trade and then going out and blaming Drew for the Cobras' performance. And especially in Game 3, where it seemed that everybody was unanimously against Drew pitching and Baranowski not, which is a whole thing in itself that we can talk about later, that I'll get into later. But let's just go into the trade, because first off, I don't think a lot of people understand what exactly went down in the trade. So let's recap. So first, January 15th, it is announced that the Cobras are trading Sawyer Behen for Brendan Zerlag in a straight-up trade. Now, everybody for about 2 weeks is absolutely livid that this would go down. Why is this a trade? Why is this happening? And then, especially after Sawyer Behen goes on the podcast and says these choice words about the trade and what happened.
Shake out.
So I think I actually talked with Behen about this after SoFi, just because of like certain things that happened in the World Series that I know I've talked to Tom about this. I'm not sure if I've told you about this. In Game 3 extra innings of the World Series, Drew comes up to me and I thought he was going to like say some words of encouragement for me, but he says, if you put two guys on, no outs, I'm pulling you, and I don't want you to pitch to Jimmy Norp. Pull some stuff like that again next year. I'm requesting a trade. I'm not playing under a captain who I personally felt didn't believe in me. So that's kind of when it started. It's sports for a long time, and someone who's been around baseball. I never played baseball, but my dad's coached it, so I've been around my brother's team a lot like that. And just being an athlete growing up, like if you're the best player on a team, or if you're the better player on a team, or if you're playing better than someone on that team, you deserve more playing time. And so I was the only pitcher on our team who had any wins that year. I'm the only pitcher on the Cobras I had all the Cobras wins, basically. And at that point, I was like, I guess Drew really doesn't trust me in these big time situations. I tried so hard as a pitcher to earn that number one role, and I felt like I did the best I could to deserve it, especially being the only pitcher on the Cobras who even had a win. When I played on the Cobras, if we were down by 2 or more runs coming into the third inning, half the team gave up, because like Drew's your manager is supposed to be the leader of your team emotionally and like all that. But whenever we were down on the Cobras last year, it was very obvious that I wouldn't say all of us, but I would definitely say Drew, and Drew's demeanor definitely affected the rest of the team. It looked like he was playing to not lose. That's just kind of my perspective, but also,
and if you look into the comments, like it is especially clear that people were really angry at Drew for this trade, that he would do this, that he would trade a player like this, and all this other stuff. So a lot of that got traction, and a lot of people have this in their mind that Drew traded Sawyer for nothing, and he's a bad manager for doing it. In comes Drew a week later, talking about the trade itself and talking about how he didn't know that Sawyer felt any of those things. And at every point in time, he was professional, he was a friend, he was an encourager, and trying to, get the best out of Sawyer.
That a lot of the stuff in the podcast was just straight up news to me, was just like new information that I didn't even know existed. The first thing that really caught me off guard was, I don't know, this may not be in chronological order, but Sawyer did say that he approached Kyle and asked for a trade, which was news to me, because I was never approached by Sawyer about him wanting to be traded ever, or him even saying that he wanted to be traded, or him saying he might want to be traded, or him that he didn't want to play for the Cobras. that conversation never happened to me. And I was also never told by Kyle that someone from my team approached him and wanted to be traded. So that was news to me, even him, which I also think is a little, I mean, I can't discredit someone's emotions and feelings if he felt that way. Maybe I wish he would have told me, because again, we didn't know that we didn't believe in him. I mean, he did pitch more innings than Behen this year. So I feel like we kind of are somewhat of a results-based like playtime thing in his rookie year. We started him off slow. He started to produce more. We started hitting him more. And I feel like I was his rookie year, especially like in 2022, when he was talking a lot and he was fired up and I loved it. Like there were a lot of fans, and a lot of not only fans, but players in the league who were not happy with how he was acting and like how, like the stuff he was doing. And I think I was his biggest defender I mean, we had the whole Preds debacle. Alec and I worked it out, but I was all up defending Sawyer. Like I was like, listen, he's young, like he's doing his thing. Like I was in everyone's face for him. So to me, it's kind of like a slap in my face to say I didn't believe in him when all I feel like I did was defend this guy. Sawyer, no, because it was the beginning of a brand new day. Like no one's thrown. I just said, if two guys get on and Norp comes up, we're going to put Behen in. We don't want to pitch to Norp. But like we obviously, if two guys gets on, you can't just walk Norp, walk the bases loaded, have no outs. And Behen, if you go through the track record, like it statistically, Behen walks less people. Behen's one of the best strike throwers in the league. If you look at this year's stats, I don't know what it was last year, but this year Sawyer walked more than double the people that Behen walked. And there was a couple base runners, I think one run scored, and I went to go take him out. And I'm sure, Tom, you remember this. I got yelled at by him that he wasn't coming out of the game. And so we kept him in the game. And then 7 runs later, we're down, which I take more responsibility as a manager. I've been a part of this, like being a baseball player, especially as a catcher. I've been a part of those conversations with pitching coaches, with pitchers, where we basically, like, when a pitcher is getting later into the games, we prep them like, hey, this is what's going to happen. Like, if you go strong, we're going to keep you in. But once you get in danger, then we're putting in the bullpen. Like, I don't necessarily see the problem with that. I've talked to a couple people about it. I do agree. There's maybe some better ways I could have said it, but I feel like people are just like, oh, you didn't give him any encouragement. But to say, I don't like tell him like, hey, you got this. Like, I mean, Sean and I are always behind him being like, yo, you got this. Like take deep breaths, control the game. Like, it wasn't like I was just being a jerk and just saying like, hey, we don't believe in you.
What really came down to, and this is, the whole idea, and I think, Sawyer at the end of his, I'll roll the clip, but at the end of it kind of is like, actually, I probably said too much, and I'm fired up and I'm heated, but.
Last thing I wanted to add right before I
Get it out.
head out of here. There's no hard feelings on Drew personally. I wanted to just put that out. I feel like it kind of sounded a little harsh.
I think that's one of those things that we create narratives in our head, and like trying to motivate ourselves. And so at the end of the day, like, Sawyer's describing his feelings, not necessarily that he thinks Drew is a bad person. He doesn't think that Drew is, a bad dude for trading him. Like, he wanted the trade. Drew was a nice guy and let him trade. And then on the way out, Sawyer said a bunch of things that he was feeling that like he wasn't believed in. And it was just a miscommunication, really, that can get worked out in a normal set of circumstances. But, on this, it was worked out on the internet. Yes, there was content. But at the end of the day, they're people, and I don't think Sawyer hates Drew. I don't think Drew hates Sawyer. They both wanted different things. Drew wanted his Cy Young pitcher to go out there and pitch, and he had his trust in him. Sawyer wanted to be a number one guy, and he couldn't do that on the Cobras. So that's very clear. And so Drew, not being a complete and total jerk, trades Sawyer because Sawyer wanted out. Like, Drew didn't want Sawyer to leave, but Sawyer wanted out. So Drew being a good guy, and this is a semi-professional league, but they're still people, they're still guys, they're not getting paid to do this, and he's not going to keep a guy on the roster who's just going to be angry for not being the number one pitcher. Like, that's not cool. So again, all of these guys talking about Drew's shtick and being an anti-hero, and yes, maybe it comes out being no good, but like all of these things is like hurting the league. It's like Drew's trying to do things for the league and be be a better person and help those who want to have fun in the league. I mean, it is, I understand that like a lot of people are talking about like this league is professional and it's a good league, but at the end of the day, those same guys will go out and make fun of people on the Magic and the Gators for wearing batting gloves. Like there's these two crowds in MLW that one on the one hand think that this league is too professional and it's too silly when guys take it too seriously. But on the other hand, if a guy is losing and is being a nice guy and trading away a player who wanted to be a number one pitcher, like then he's a jerk and awful and he's causing his team to lose. And you can't. I feel like there's these two things there that I'm trying to reconcile, and they just don't make sense in my head. Like either this league is fun or this league is this league is supposed to be professional. And MLW, I don't think is either of those. I think that's the beauty of MLW is that it is kind of professional and it's competitive. But at the same time, these guys are personalities and dudes, and they're having fun. I'm not going to say they're best friends. I see like a lot of comments or a few comments saying that Drew is only a manager because he's good friends with Kyle. And I think people are under this idea that a lot of people at MLW are best friends, and that's not necessarily true either. Like they're just dudes who grew up with together and they went to the same school, but they're not necessarily like none of these guys are best friends outside of like Kyle and Tommy. And maybe there's some other relationships that I don't know. Like Alec, Ryan, and Brennan are probably pretty good friends as well. But you can't go around just assuming that everyone in this league is just best friends with one another. And whenever they make a bad decision or Kyle is somehow protecting Drew from something. And I think often that's just not the case. So another aspect, I'll just talk about maybe the game itself. A lot of people were in the comments talking about this is a shtick and a clown show, and this isn't good for the league. What I will say is that yes and no, maybe. Yes, you want your league to be competitive, but the fact that you're commenting and that you're angry, this video has just as many comments as the Eagles, as the other three series. It has just as many comments with like 3/4 of the views. So in 75% of the views, they got just as many, like MLW got just as many engagements. So if you're really angry about Drew making this league anti-competitive or it's not good for the league, in fact, it's actually better for the league because you guys are commenting and angry and liking it or disliking it and going to the comments and commenting on each other who all is hating on Drew. Like you guys are benefiting the league. So this idea that Kyle is somehow protecting Drew and that it's bad for the league and Drew should just leave is kind of ridiculous because you're just reiterating that Drew should be in the league because it's causing more engagement. So if you don't want Drew to be in the league, don't comment. Don't like the video. Don't watch the Cobras if that's what you really feel. But that's the thing is that you're going to watch and do it anyway. Now, I do understand and sympathize with maybe Kyle, if he's bad for the league, why is he going out and representing MLW outside of the YouTube space and getting a lot of interest in view and drummed up back to the channel from playing on Blitzball and playing in Ball and Play? So just another thing that this is just as ridiculous. I understand that this idea that Drew is the anti-hero of MLW, but he kind of just got put in that spot, not because of himself, but because of the comments. I mean, the Cobras were always just wild and having fun and always up in your face anyway, and people didn't like that from the beginning. And so he's always been the anti-hero, not because of necessarily his own want, but it's because the MLW fans put him in that position to begin with. It's not this is because I will say, just knowing from what Drew has said on podcasts, when he ran the podcast and I was listening. So if you want to go listen to the first few episodes when Drew was running the podcast, he was talking to Kyle and Dan. It's he doesn't feel like he wants to be in this position, but that is the position he has to play in because of it. And it does get a lot of reactions, obviously. Now, I do understand and sympathize with maybe those who are I really wanted to see the Cobras win the series, and that Drew going out and pitching in Game 3, it didn't end up giving the Cobras a chance to win. And maybe so. However, it's tough to know. Are the manager coming into that? You're betting on yourself, putting yourself in the game. For the most part, I felt like Drew did a pretty good job. He had movement, but it's just location, and he did walk a lot of people, and that's been his problem when you watch back in 2021. That is working on that, and if he can continue to try and locate, he'll do better, and be better on that. Like that's just going to come with practice. But it's always it's one of those things. It's like you don't know until you're in a game setting, and the Cobras knowing that the that the Magic got swept and then the Wildcats almost got swept. They're not even last in the league. Maybe they're third on differential, but in the AL, they're still in the fight. They're only, again, one game behind the Preds, and they're one game ahead of the Magic. So they still have plenty of time to figure everything out. And football is such an interesting and lovely game, but and it's the same thing with Jackson Pearson. Like Jackson Pearson, came out and just was locating off a few feet, and the same thing with RJ Walgate. And the guys are figuring out their pitches still. It's a tough thing to transition into, especially for Drew, who hasn't pitched for 2 years. So I understand the decision. I understand Behen was probably could have done well. He did give up 8 in the 4th. He's still a Cy Young winner. And I understand people's anger, especially if you're a Cobras fan, to say you know what, we still could have won the series. And I think that's a valiant point, because they did score 3 uncratched in the last game when they only scored 1 in the first. So it really is dependent. Is one game going to define the Cobra season? I don't know. I don't think they're going 3-12 like some people are saying. I think there's still a lot to work on. It seems like the Wildcats, the Cobras at least, they have Behen, who's going to get them 2 solid outings. The Wildcats look like they have no idea who their starting pitcher is. It looks like Ballman, but is Ballman going to get Kim Ballman locate? Because on that first game, he struggled to locate. But in the future, is he going to be able to? We'll see. But overall, I'm making this video, and as my main point, it's we have to be better as a community to understand the interesting dynamics that are in play at MLW. MLW is a semi-professional league. These guys are not getting paid to do this. The only person who probably is Kyle and Tommy, and they are doing this because they love it, not because it makes them a ton of money. And all the other money is coming from merch and going to other guys who are probably making cents on dollar for their name, image, likeness that comes from jersey sales. None of these guys do it for the money. And it's great that we have a community that is so passionate and strong about these things. But we have to be more consistent on batting gloves, for instance, and letting people feel comfortable and be competitive, but also at the same time, let's not demonize people. At the end of the day, these guys are going to go out there, and on a given day, it could just be somebody's day, and they could sweep somebody. That has happened more and more as the years gone on, even though the league has gotten way more competitive, which I thought would be the opposite. I felt like there would be a lot more 2-1 series and not as many sweeps. But as we gone on, there's been more sweeps than there ever has been in the league. I think what it comes down to is Drew Davis himself and the personality that he has built for himself. Maybe that not necessarily that he had built, but the personality he has responded to because of the MLW community. All of the 3-2, the reverse sweep stuff, and all of the he's a clown, he's a joke, and all this other stuff. And I think there is a point that it's fine when it's working and they're winning, but when they're not, it just looks like a clown show. But at the same time, I'd like to take a point from Tyrese Halliburton, who's a dude who only talks trash when he's up. And if you're a trash talker, or if you're being, having fun out there, or being this anti-hero, you have to be. It doesn't matter when you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to do that all the time. Otherwise, you're just a hypocrite. Otherwise, you're just doing it because you can. And you're not actually doing it for the love of the game. You're not doing it because it's a good thing. You're just doing it to do it. And Drew's at least consistent in that. And it gets people to watch and respond more often than somebody who's just, doing good. I think it's one of those things people are willing to have more patience, because with other teams, like with Jackson and the Wildcats, or maybe the Magic right now, because those guys are a little more they're typical baseball players maybe, or they're just kind of like, levels like, what, they're not super momentum or emotional about it. But because Drew and the Cobras are more of an emotional team, it seems like, people have to ride on that and pick on that. So you're like, oh, you're not riding so high now. And that's just our human nature to kind of do that. But at the end of the day, I mean, we will see if this one game matters. We will see, what it's going to do in the future. If it comes down to one game, maybe we'll come back and say, you know what, like maybe Drew shouldn't have pitched. But what if Drew could always go out and have still a year, and maybe this adds to more pitching because having more depth and doing that is really important because you got the D-backs with 5 deep, you got the Wildcats with 5 deep. Drew getting out there and getting reps I think is a good thing. But at the end of the day, 15 games is not a short time. So we'll see if it matters in the end. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And this is a very interesting topic, a topic that I felt like I needed to respond to. And I am biased. I fully realize that. Like, I know that at the end of the day, it's less about like, the trade is one thing. The putting yourself in game 3 is one thing. And also you have to take into account the years of other things that have happened that has upset the MLW community. And I fully recognize that and understand that. But I think we have to take this. I'm taking this in an isolated incident along with the trade as a way to show it's like, as part of this season, like the backlash and the agony that's going on in the comments isn't actually representative of what the season is going to be like and what the Cobra season is going to be like. Like they are still doing fine. And so the meltdown on the comments is just, it's a little much, guys. Like it is a little much in comparison to the fact that we have the Wildcats who were almost swept and the Magic who were swept, and those communities around their teams were a lot more positive. But at the end of the day, that is I might be comparing apples to oranges there. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts on this whole situation are, and let me know, what do you guys think I should do next? I'm probably going to be doing slate comments and some funny comments on that. So just let me know, and I will see you guys in the next video.